you won't be surprised to learn that the media suddenly cares about the fate of the Afghan people.
Now, okay.
Suddenly cares about, our men and women in danger in Afghanistan that they've been ignoring for years and years and years. Here's just a little taste of the way that Jake Tapper and everybody at CNN, and effectively everybody at MSNBC and everybody at Fox News, you got a real bipartisan consensus going on here, guys, have approached the end of this war. Let's take a listen.
Look, you told me a few months ago on this program that you thought it was entirely likely that the Taliban would be taking over the country. But President Biden, just last month, quote, "The likelihood there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely." He was wrong.
Jake, what we've done, what the president has done, is make sure that we were able to adjust to anything happening on the ground. And the fact that he sent additional forces in, we had those forces at the ready, fully prepared to go in the event that this moved in a direction where we needed forces in place to ensure that our personnel was safe and secure, to ensure also that we could do everything possible to bring out of Afghanistan those Afghans most at risk. That's exactly what we're doing.
Why didn't you have the troops in there and then let that happen first before taking them out?
Again, I come back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago, which is that status quo was not sustainable. Like it or not, there was an agreement that the forces would come out on May 1st. Had we not begun that process, which is what the president did, and the Taliban saw, then we would have been back at war with the Taliban. And we would have been back at war with tens of thousands of troops having to go in because the 2,500 troops we had there and the air power would not have sufficed to deal with the situation, especially as we see, alas, the hollowness of the Afghan security forces. And by the way, from the perspective of our strategic competitors around the world, there's nothing they would like more than to see us in Afghanistan for another 5, 10, 20 years. It's simply not in the national interest.
I got to say, great answer.
He's totally right.
Yeah.
That was Secretary of State Antony Blinken, for those who are listening. And look, every single question, every single segment is framed in this pro-neocon way.
Yes, that's right.
It's framed in this forever war. Let's just stay forever. Let's put the troops back in. Why are we leaving now? Every single segment is framed in this exact same way.
I had so many people attacking me yesterday, Krystal. I broke my rare Twitter thing because I felt that I had to go in and I wanted to make sure to fight in the elite consensus. And somebody needs to back up the fact that ending a forever war is messy, it's gross, but at the end of the day, these people need to acknowledge what they're saying. And I want to back up what Tony Blinken is, which the media is not reporting this responsibly. Everybody's saying, oh, the Biden administration, they should have done more. Maybe we could have stayed 3 more months. If you stay 3 more months, you violate the peace agreement with the Taliban.
Yes.
And that's it. Weapons hot on all American soldiers. Do you want to see 20-year-olds get blown to bits by a suicide bomb for 3 more months of time in Afghanistan? You go ahead and make that case to the American people. I say hell no. Not one more life. Not one more wasted on this goddamn war. And this is what these people are presenting it as an option when it's not. The option is soldiers die and we stay a couple more months to try and do some sort of orderly transition. Because, of course, the entire war is always conducted very orderly. And it's just been a total and complete success up until this point.
They just needed 3 more months and then it would all have gone perfectly.
We have the absolute capability in order to do this, right? Apparently, I've been assured of this, even though the entire 20 years in the country shows that it's always going to be a complete goddamn mess. And yet, how are they reporting it? Axios, what's supposed to be the straight news? Let's put this up there. They had the gall to put this in a story. It's a stunning failure for the West and an embarrassment for Biden. It's a traumatic turn for veterans who sacrificed in Afghanistan for the past 20 years, the 20K plus wounded, the survivors of the more than 2.3 who were killed. On the latter part, I agree. It probably is really traumatic, in order to say, my buddy died over there, or I lost my leg, or I lost my hand, or I lost my nose, or an eyeball, something, whatever, a piece of me left behind, and to watch it all turn. And to those people, many of whom are fans of this show, I want to say, this is not on you. You fought with heroism. Not a single part of this is on you. It is on the generals. It is on the political leadership. It is on the people who sent you there for nothing and who lied to you and who lied to us about what you were supposed to be doing. None of this is on the soldiers themselves. But to say it's a stunning failure for the West, I keep coming back to this. Imagine if they cared that much. Whenever our troops were getting blown to bits for nothing. Where was this reporting whenever in 2015 or in 2012 when our special operators were getting blown out of the sky in order to back up the Afghan forces to try and clear the Taliban out of cities, which they now control today?
Yeah.
Imagine if they were that outraged. I will never forget watching, and what really turned me, because I had a very different view on the Afghan war, not even 5 years ago, is when I had to become a Pentagon correspondent and I had to start writing the obituaries of guys who were not just younger than me, but a lot younger than me.
Yeah.
18, 19 years old, whose families are saying, what the hell did he die for? And the Pentagon doesn't listen to them, and their bodies come back to Dover and everybody forgets about them. Those are the people I think about whenever we talk about these stories.
Yeah, and you know what? If you care about the people of Afghanistan, past few years have been the most deadly.
Yes.
And
because of the Civil War.
That never gets reported.
Right.
That never makes, Jake Tapper's Sunday show. They never cared. They only care when it comes to you're actually ending the military engagement. And on that Axios piece, one of the bombshell quotes they have in there is from Ryan Crocker, who is a U.S. ambassador to Afghanistan under President Obama. And he said, I think this is already an indelible stain on his presidency. That's what he said publicly. He was one of the guys in the Afghanistan papers that admitted what an utter and complete disaster the whole thing has been. There, privately, he was saying this is a direct quote, our biggest single project may have been the development of mass corruption. Okay? That's what he really thinks. Mm-hmm. Okay? You don't see that on the Sunday shows. You don't see that in the papers today. And there's another piece of this, too, that we've been warning about as well is, these resistance liberals who rehabilitated Bush. Suddenly I see a few Democrats remembering this guy's a lying war criminal who definitely he's in the rankings for the worst president in U.S. history, judging by what he did to our people and how he made the world a worse and more dangerous place. Okay? But all of these people got rehabilitated during the Trump era.
Yes.
All of them got primetime. They got primetime shows. They got great speaking slots. They got contributorships on CNN, on MSNBC, Bill Krystal, all the rest. And now they're in positions of esteem with a broad swath of the country, with the Democratic base of the country. And so they're in position to go back to their roots of making their neocon case. And that's exactly what you see so many of them out there aggressively doing. They backed Biden on basically everything up to this point, and now the bipartisan consensus emerges, and their whole lot, Democrats are not giving him much cover either. I mean, all these people and the Republicans are absolutely ridiculous on this as well. When it was Trump, they thought it was a great idea to end the war. They were all in favor of it. We were being told, the reason to vote for Trump over Biden is because he's going to get us out of the forever wars and Biden's going to keep us there forever. And now that Biden has actually done it, suddenly they've done a complete 180. I think it's the RNC pulled down their page on their website about the Taliban peace treaty that President Trump negotiated. So all of these people are total shameless cowards. And the fact that the media elevated all of these neocons who were responsible more than anyone for the situation that our people in Afghanistan find themselves in today should be completely ashamed of themselves.
Absolutely. And you want to know who are the people that millions of Americans are getting their news from? One of them is Richard Engel. And actually, I respected Richard Engel. I remember whenever he was kidnapped in Syria or whatever, and it was crazy. But he's revealing complete mask off in terms of the policy that he preferred. Look at what he tweeted out yesterday from the streets of Kabul. Quote, more on intel failure. How did the U.S. get duped into thinking there was ever a peace process with the Taliban? Outfoxed by the Taliban, question mark? I'd say that's embarrassing, but shameful is closer. So let's analyze that, shall we? What is Richard saying? That we should not have had a peace deal with the Taliban? So what Richard is saying is that more Americans should have stayed in Afghanistan forever and should have fought and died for the Afghan National Security Forces and for the government, which folded in 72 hours. That's what Richard is saying. You know what ending a war is like? It means shaking hands with people who killed your soldiers, looking people in the eyes, and stomaching the fact that you failed, so you have to look your enemy in the face and you have to sign a deal with the guy. Is it pretty? No. It's not pretty. Absolutely not. And yet, I supported Donald Trump and Mike Pompeo whenever they went to Doha and they signed this agreement because it's the right thing to do. Yeah, it sucks. It pisses me off watching guys who take Taliban, or take Kabul, who were sitting in Guantanamo Bay or in prison not even that long ago. Really makes me mad. But what makes me more mad is to think of all the people who are going to come back in a wooden box from Afghanistan to land here, and having watched some of these ceremonies at Arlington National Cemetery, it's worth it. That's what it requires. And yet, gung-ho Richard out there banging his chest, how dare we get outfoxed by the Taliban? The only people who got outfoxed by the Taliban are the Afghan government themselves. They're the ones who got themselves beat. And it's just, can't we just have one person in the media representing the fact that maybe this was as good as it was ever going to get? Well, just one person.
Or channeling their rage where it should be,
yes,
which is that the people who lied for years and years and years, for the people who got us into this war in the first place, based on what was truly a radical notion that we were going to be able to remake the world in our image, that we were going to spread democracy around the globe. I mean, this was insane from the beginning. And completely anti-historical based on what our experiences in trying to do such things around the world have always ended up exactly as this is ultimately ending up. So look, all these people who, they're upset. And look, I do want to say, like, the images are the reality of what's happening there is no doubt about it. It's horrific. It's terrible to watch. It's heart-wrenching. It's heartbreaking to watch. The Biden administration should have planned better. They should be doing more. That is absolutely the case. But there is no one that we are seeing in mainstream media who's saying, the real problem here is that we were lied to for years and years and years, not the fact that now the American people are actually learning the truth.
To your earlier point, I just realized half the generals who lied to us, they're people who've been in the media now for 5 years talking about how Donald Trump is the worst person on earth.
That's right.
John Allen, head of the Brookings Institution, who lied to the American Congress and the American people. He endorsed Hillary Clinton. You might remember him from the DNC 2016 debate. And he's all over cable news talking about all of that. Half of these generals have been on to talk about how Trump is, the Antichrist for doubting the NATO alliance. This is who they have elevated. The actual liars of the propaganda machine themselves have fused together. And in a time of crisis like now, we have not seen one honest perspective yet on the media. All I'm asking for is a debate. Have somebody who is articulating our view and the actual view that actually maybe the US government is totally inept and that this is as good as it was ever going to get, and that the alternative was more American dead. Go out and find somebody who's articulating that view on cable. Instead, this is what we're getting from Andrea Mitchell, who's apparently in tears over what's going on right now. Let's take a listen.
Educated to leave their villages, defy their fathers. I've seen it myself. I've been there. And I mean, I know this is not your sole job, but you are the person that is speaking for the US government right now. And don't we have a moral responsibility to do something for these people? Just today, the White House repeated the president is not going to change his position. He's been consistent on that. Even when he was vice president, that was his position. He disagreed with the surge. We all know that.
There you go.
Where's the care and concern for the women and girls in Saudi?
Yeah, they don't care.
We don't hear about that much.
Care. Right.
And this is where, Biden, again, I just have to give this guy a lot of credit because he's been really clear on this from the beginning. Yes. I mean, he got asked a while back, like, don't you bear some moral responsibility for the women and girls of Afghanistan? No. And he said, no. There are places all around the world where there are atrocities being committed, where women and girls are being subjected to horrific violence or oppression, or LGBTQ people. I mean, there are so many places around the world that are completely screwed up. And that is a heartbreaking, horrible state of affairs, and I wish there was more we could do about it. But if you learn nothing else from these 20 wasted years in Afghanistan, it is that we can't go in and change these places and make them into our own, spread democracy. All of this foreign adventurism only ever comes back to bite us, but not just us, to make the world a worse and less safe place with more violence and more oppression. That is really the end result of these 20 years in Afghanistan. Yeah. And is that hard to look at? Hell yes. It's horrible to look at. but it's about damn time that the American people actually knew the truth.
Yes, stare it in the face. Have the media tell you. Yeah, look, if enough Afghans care about Afghan girls and Afghan women to fight and die for it, then they can do that. And we found out pretty clearly that they don't care enough in order to do any of that. In a way, I feel terrible. We gave a lot of people in Afghanistan false hope that we were going to stay there forever, that we were going to foster a liberal international democracy, that we were going to, prop up a society. We can't do it. It's just simply not possible.
But also this government we were propping up had no local support.
Yes,
They're just a
exactly.
bunch of
It's
kleptocrats.
fake.
We were partnered with freaking warlords, some of whom were worse than the Taliban,
Oh, yeah.
child sex slaves.
Don't even get me
who
started.
part of the
Right.
reason why the Taliban was ever, appealing to anyone in the population is because the warlords were even worse.
Yes.
So those were our allies.
They would kill the rapists. They would walk in and they would hang the people who were raping children in the village who were allied with the government. You're in the village. Who do you think you support?
That's
one of the worst stories I ever had to write on my junior days was about how dead Afghan widows of the Afghan National Security Forces were entitled to payouts, right? Like when you get killed. Yeah, well, the U.S.-backed government was performing these widows was making them perform sexual favors on the officials in order to get their pay. Can you imagine? We paid that. That's our money.
Allies.
That was our ally. That was also our money that we were paying out to these widows, and we were forcing them in order to sexually degrade themselves in order to get the cash that they were owed because their husbands put their lives on it. You can go look it up. It was one of the worst stories that I ever had to write from John Sopko, the Special Inspector General of Afghanistan.
So I can't say I really blame the Afghan army for giving up as quickly as they did, because what were they really fighting for? They were fighting for this completely kleptocratic fake government and a bunch of warlords. I mean, it's not like what we were propping up here was so incredibly amazing. So you may not have heard that on the news, and you're probably not going to hear that on the news, but that was the truth and the reality of what was really happening in Afghanistan, and is unconscionable all the way around.
That's right. Okay.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.